One time for the queens, Mother Earth ain't nothing like a woman. Cause a real man puts women first, ain't nothing like God or the ain't nothing like a woman. One time for the ladies in the place, ain't nothing like a woman. I just smile every time I see your face, ain't nothing like a woman. One time for the queens, Mother Earth ain't nothing like a woman. Cause a real man puts women first, ain't nothing like God or the planet ruler, mother of the earth. Birth man from your womb, God bless you for the hurt. Beauty of the definition of it all shit. My empress of the moon, crown glory I sit. My night turn to day when you come around me. You hold a brother down and make me feel okay. You ain't got to be a supermodel slim figure. I love you as you are, you can be a little bigger. I can see your light shining bright from within. I can see divinity, I see it in your trend. Ain't nothing like a woman dressed in pretty brown skin. Picture perfect goddess to the world, use a 10. Heaven in your eyes, thick thighs, big hips. A heart full of gold, pretty feet, wide hips. I love the way you talk, hear the words of an angel. Keep your head high, never let the world change you. One time for the ladies in the place, ain't nothing like a woman. I just smile every time I see your face, ain't nothing like a woman. One time for the queens, Mother Earth ain't nothing like a woman. Cause a real man puts women first, ain't nothing like a head roller, finger snapping, love you at a toe. Dedicated loving, I'm just showing gratitude. I love the way you walk, love your talk, love it all. I love your imperfections and all your little flaws. Your mispronounced words being heard so beautiful. I just wanna kiss you from your head till your kills off, let your back rest, girl. I can give a hell about your flat chest, girl. You ain't gotta be what others say that you ought to be. Every man was born from a woman, you a part of me. Hair did, nails did, love it when they ain't. Give me good love and make a brother just faint. You ain't got to wear weave, you can rock it natural. Take your perm out, still pretty, that's factual. Bad to the bone, got a throne for you to sit. You my number one song, going gold. You ain't nothing like a woman. One time for the ladies in the place, ain't nothing like a woman. I just smile every time I see your face, ain't nothing like a woman. One time for the queens, Mother Earth ain't nothing like a woman. Cause a real man puts women first, ain't nothing like a light-skinned woman. Ain't nothing like a brown-skinned woman. Ain't nothing like a dark-skinned woman. Ain't nothing like an overweight woman. Got something I can hold on to. I just wanna put a hold on you. Ain't nothing like a good-looking woman. Ain't nothing like a good-cooking woman. Ain't nothing like you. I need a revolutionary girl, living in a revolutionary world. My queen is Zinga, my queen Omega, yeah, my Asada, she make me holla. I need a revolutionary girl, living in a revolutionary world. My queen is Zinga, my queen Omega, yeah, my Asada, she make me holla. Juicing bitches in the morning. Give me stamina when we performing. Let me make love to your mental. Burn a little oil, it's essential. You can burn the herbs when I'm sick. I can build a nation with your hips. You's a strong woman, love your fam. Never sell your body for the man. You ain't got a pose in the nude. You fully covered up, I'm still glow. I can see the thing from behind, but the most important part, that's your mind. I need a revolutionary girl, living in a revolutionary world. My queen is Zinga, my queen Omega, yeah, my Asada, she make me holla. I need a revolutionary girl, living in a revolutionary world. My queen is Zinga, my queen Omega. Yeah, my Asada, she make me holla. Burn a little frankincense and myrrh. Let me rub my fingers through your hair. I love it when you scream black power. Let me rub your feet for like an hour. I love it how you like to feel well. For your fan with the knowledge of yourself. I love how you concerned with your health. It's only plant-based foods up on the shelf. Falafel with the kale, get me full. Plus you smelling like essential oils. Kinky hair, you my empress. Nappy little melanated princess. I need a revolutionary girl. Living in a revolutionary world. My queen is Zinga, my queen Omega. Yeah, my Asada, she make me holla. I need a revolutionary girl. Living in a revolutionary world. My queen is Zinga, my queen Omega. Yeah, my Asada, she make me holla. Be my queen and singer, Nefertiti, Fanny Lou Hamer. Speak like a side, put them bleeps all up in danger. Come be my queen, red, black, and green, reppin' that team, girl. Banging the beats, clutching your fists, all in the stream, world. Kente scarf, wrapping your head, over your dread. She hit the brain, she ain't ashamed, bringing that pain. I can explain, know what I feel it. I'm hitting the ceiling, she looking at million, her body appealing. She give me the healing I need, she give me the healing I need. Indeed, lay you on a Kente, let's go all in. Let's talk about the culture, let's go all in. Amos Wilson, Dr. Pookrum, let's go all in. Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, let's go all in.
Of this video, but like I said, it's probably about 6 hours. But the clip I'm uploading, it got Black Dot in it, and it has a sister by the name of Nadine Gilliard. The sister passed away, and she, rest in power to the sister, and she dealt with the science of iridology. And that's a deep science within itself. We hear about a lot of other sciences, whether it's acupuncture, whether it's Reiki. We hear a lot of different sciences, but we really don't hear about iridology like that within our community. And the information was amazing. It was explosive. Shout out to Knowledge Born Allah. You know what I'm saying? The sister's son. And shout out to that brother for bringing these brothers out there. A.A. Rashid was out there, Black Dot, True Master. They was all out in Bavaria, Germany. So it's an explosive lecture. Like I said, it's real long. I'm gonna give y'all a clip of this. If you want to see the full video, make sure you go to the Patreon site. Show support independent media. I'm bringing you some explosive information here. Thanks for tuning in. Please enjoy. Peace.
So this is how the body is set up through the iris of the eye. Your body is split in half. Half your side, your body, you inherited from your mother. The other half, you inherited from your father. Every person comes in the world with at least 12 to 15 weaknesses in the body. You have 102 systems. So you say 12, 15 weaknesses may not seem like a lot, but it depends upon what systems are weak or how you're going to feel. Okay? You have what are called key systems of the body. Okay, and I'm just going to go over some of them because if those systems are not working, your body can't heal. I don't care what you have. You have to have balance, and everything is a balance. So you have to have balance in the body, just as like you have to have balance in your life in order to maintain good life. Okay, so you have starting from this side here is your ascending colon. This is how life began, believe it or not, from the colon. You started out as a bowel. Ascending, your transverse colon that connects you to the other side. You are descending, sigmoid, run on out to the rectal anal area, which is 8 miles to that colon. Then you have 21 feet of small intestine that sits in the center. Now, 8 miles is a lot of colon. That's why when you go to the doctors and you can track cancer, you can cut off so many feet and they say, well, that's okay. You know what I mean? You have a lot more left. But that's not true. You start cutting things away, then you're going to run into blockages. What's going to happen? Things are going to start to cut off and not circulate the way that they should. Okay, so I know a lot of you probably heard that 95% of your diseases stem from your colon. Okay, I like to call it the garbage disposal. That's where everything leaks out and starts to spill into where we have a weak spot in the body. It starts from the colon, large and small intestine, then the waste material in the body filters down through your kidneys, gallbladder, then it ends up in your liver. The blood that pumps out of your liver then goes into your heart, and then the heart sends everything back to your circulatory system, lymphatic and circulatory system. So it's one connection. It's one connection. It's no way out unless you're helping it to work itself out. And that's all I do, is I teach you the process of elimination. I magnify your eyes with the magnifying glass and light, and that shows me what I went to school to study are weaknesses, discolorations, markings, and lesions, something you can't see with a naked eye. But when you magnify it and you learn it, you understand what it is, okay? And it holds true, okay? Now, I went over the colon, but surrounding this colon, the only thing that separates your colon from your other organs, it's what's called the autonomic nerve ring. This is this white ring in the center here. That's your nervous system, one of them, that's attached to the colon. So if 95% of us have some toxic material in our colon, there's also 95% of us that's really stressed out, because you can't have one bad thing without having the other. It's attached, okay? So 95% of us have some form of stress in our bodies. And then we have the outside stress that triggers off what's really going on the inside. People think it's stressful. I'm not in a stressful environment. Yeah, well, you have some undesirables inside that's pressing on those nerves, and it's sending signals out to the rest of the body, causing illness, causing weakness, causing depressions and all types of diseases that you can't imagine, okay? So these are key systems now. These systems must be in good working order in order for you to think in terms of having health, all right? Now, we have the thyroid gland. I'll just stay here. The thyroid gland. The thyroid gland is the gland that controls the fat in the body, all right? You can't burn up too much fat. That's why the people who are hyperactive and always wanting to eat and eat a lot of food, but their bodies are like, it's like on speed. You know what I mean? It burns up all the calories and the fats in the body. Okay, so you can't have a thyroid that's burning up too much fat, or you can't have a thyroid that's not burning up enough fat. Okay, it's a key system that must work. All right, and then you have the the lungs. I'll just go with the lungs, the upper respiratory system. All right, you must deep breathe. And 95% of us are not doing that because they don't even know how to breathe. They don't even know how to breathe from their mouths, the way we're supposed to breathe, and let it out. You understand? So 95% of us are walking around getting a lack of oxygen to our brains, okay? Because 50% of our brain needs oxygen. is water. So you need a high concentration of oxygen going to the brain. And the brain is, of course, what tells the body what to do. So if your brain is out of balance, your whole body's out of balance. You know, it's a king. You know what I mean? It's the king of this distribution of showing us what we need, walk, talk, think. All the things that we do is coming from that brain. So you must have a good working brain, and lack of oxygen, exercise, and all that, it plays that role, all right? So we must have deep breathing, good lungs. Then we have the kidneys. These are all the ways that waste has to leave the body. And these are the systems that were designed to get rid of that waste for us naturally, okay? And when these systems, again, are not working, your body's holding on to more waste than it should, and the waste that the body is supposed to throw off naturally every day, which is scientifically 2.5 pounds. Scientifically, we're supposed to throw off 2.5 pounds of waste material out of our skin every single day just by sweating. But most of us don't do enough form of exercise. We don't drink enough water, you know, to form that sweat to throw it off. And that's why we're diseased. Because again, we're holding on to toxins that smart. When he came to me, they had already given him his death wish. They told him he wouldn't live more than 2 weeks. And his mother, they had gave her tickets to go to Disney World as his death wish. Okay? And they said he wouldn't live more than past the 2 weeks. I said, well, bring him on over here. Let's see what we can do. He couldn't talk because of the AZT that they were giving him. Were burning up his vocal cords on the inside. Let me tell you something a little bit. AZT was the next form of chemotherapy that they designed for chemotherapy. And what happened was, once they found out that it was so hot that you couldn't even touch it with your hand, they put it on the side. They threw it sort of supposedly in the garbage, but in the garbage that was never thrown out, because they were going to use it sometime later. You know what I'm saying? Even if they had to cool it off a little bit. But however, they were going to keep. So they kept this, and they. So when the so-called, I like to say so-called AIDS, because I can break it down point by point. I'm not going to take time like that today to do that to you, but I'm telling you, I can break it down point by point to show you where it came from, how it came, why it came, and what it is exactly on a scientific note.
Across the middle of one, you created another form, another energy. This can be found in the ancient temples of Kemet right now. They don't even know how old it is, so to speak. And it's 13, and that number is significant, we know. But what a lot of people don't realize is, in some circles, they're saying it didn't take one sperm to, impregnate the egg. It took the sacrifice of 12 others to make the way for that one sperm. All right? So Jesus and the 12 disciples is on a metaphysical principle. He didn't get there by himself. 12 other dudes or 12 other sperm cells had to make the way for him to come in. So that's why the number 13 is also very significant on a metaphysical level. All right. Okay, we want to talk about the music and the DNA. All right, our DNA is very important to us. And, me and True Master was talking yesterday, because, we be building and stuff. And he was saying that every time they try to crack this DNA, our DNA finds a way to reprogram itself. It is a computer that cannot be hacked. It can appear to be hacked, and I added, when it came out with crack cocaine to try to crack the code of who he was, some people got bad. A lot of people didn't make it. You know what I'm saying? But it seemed like 2 or 3 years later, them same people are no longer affected by it. The crack has done nothing. They are functional crackheads now. Crackheads with jobs. They got cars, but good credit. You know what I mean? When it first came through, because the computer
of African womanhood. Now, I'm teaching this class thinking of a range of ages, and including teenagers, even though we don't have any in the audience right now, but we did have a youngster online on Monday. And definitely, thanks to Baba Shaka Zulu, we'll have DVDs available. So we definitely want to make sure our daughters get the information. But I definitely want to say I'm happy that Brother Baruti asked me to do this class, because it's an opportunity for me to first and foremost honor my mother, my grandmother, the women in my family line, but also to share what I call wisdom with my sisters and daughters today. Number one, to be life affirming. And when I read that, the first thing popped in my mind, oh, very different from Europeans who, promote abortion, and well, they're very anti-life, anti-nature in general. Number two, to be in a partnership with not just a man, with an African man. And as African women, our partner should be an African man, first and foremost, and only. Number three, to be a political organizer. And definitely in this society, that political organization should be geared towards sovereignty. Because I think if you have any idea of what's going on in this society today, you know that the only salvation, solution, only hope for us is a separate sovereign nation. And sovereignty for our younger people in the class, total independence, total control of what goes on in your nation. So nobody else is dictating in any way. You're speaking your own languages, your own forms of government, your own spiritual systems, your own diet, medical care, everything is controlled by you. And anything short of that, we continue to see, on a daily basis. It just breaks your heart to see how our people are being demoralized, degraded, and physically killed, for breathing while Black. To be an African woman is to be a mother who does whatever is necessary to protect her child. And, those were the old school moms. You just do what you have to do. No one better put a hand on your child. And your child was your first priority. Being an African woman is to be a healer. And that's something we'll talk about tonight on the agenda. First and foremost, we have to heal ourselves. And all our need of healing, but, physician, heal thyself. However, it's not the situation where I have to heal myself, then I'll help heal someone else. Well, it will take us our entire lives to heal ourselves. So we're doing all of this concurrently. Okay, but with emphasis, because the more that we heal, we're healing our minds, our spirits, our bodies. The more we know, we have better health. We're in a better position to help heal others. So anytime you see the words, definitely if you see the word feminism, it doesn't matter if you put Black in front of it or not. Basically, feminism is the women's movement. It is a promotion of white women, and they've, recruited Black people. They always recruit because you can help them. You have to do the work and finance their movement, because they're the ones who are going to benefit from it, in the same way that with the affirmative action movement. And I think Hudson Weems and Valithia point this out. They're the ones who benefited, people. The illusion was affirmative action helped Black people. It did to some degree, but the main beneficiaries of that were white females. But basically, the feminist movement is a white woman's movement, even though you may see other colors. It's their movement in reaction to their men, who they have a just reaction. They have been repressed and oppressed and disrespected by their men. So, that's a family issue. That's their issue. That's not our issue. And they have sold us on, oh, it is all men. Now, Black men are doing some things in the same way that Black women are doing things today that who are not traditionally us, but we're imitating somebody else. But the bottom line is Black men do not hold the power in this country. So whatever negative effects that we're experiencing as a Black woman experiencing, now you get if your husband or the men in your lives are sexist, well, that's a different issue. But in terms of who's in control, but regardless of what they're doing, a Black man, unless he's working to help Europeans and he's working against African people, those are the exceptions. The other Black men, they're not our enemies. They have issues, and many of them from being in this society in the same way that we do. And we all need to work on our issues. Those are family problems. But our problems, those problems are separate from the white feminist movement and the women's movement. And we need to be clear on it. A major point in her article is whites as well as Black women and even a few Black men who've done these anthologies, they are revising history, something that Europeans do regularly. So they're going back. If you were a Black woman and you said anything about women, you are being labeled a Black feminist. So they're making reference to women. This whole movement started in the 70s, but they're alluding to people who predate the 70s. They were early feminists. And so basically you have any Black woman that said anything where she used the word, had some mention that, women were being mistreated, she becomes a feminist. And a big problem with Black feminism, the thinking behind that is that your plight as a woman takes priority as your plight as an African, when the reality is it's the fact that you're African. That's what's your major problem, not the fact that you're a woman. It's the fact that, because you could turn to a man today and your plight remains the same because you are an African in a society.
Within the sacred orature of the Yoruba diaspora, we have an amazing story called Osheotura. Okay. And in Osheotura, what happens is all these deities come down from the heavenly realm onto the planet Earth, right? And the dominant ones, the ones who are doing the most, are Obatala, the Lord of the white, the king of the white cloth, the Lord of the clouds, the one who molds the child in the womb and sets the ethical standards. We have Ogun, who is the tool maker and the wild man in the woods. And we have Shango, who is the Lord of the flame and political organization and the ego of the human being. Okay. And they come down with Oshun, who is the goddess of love and sweet water and sensuality and compassion and all of that. And in the folklore, when they start out trying to create the world, one of the male deities makes some comment to the effect that they really don't need Oshun. Okay. And she's very sensitive to insult, by the way, you know. So Oshun decides, oh, well, you'll see. And she goes and she sits on the moon and spends time looking in the mirror and powdering her face, you know. And while she does that, all the sweet water on the earth dries up. And they can't do nothing. You know, they can't build no houses. They can't make no tools. They can't grow no food. They can't create nothing. Nothing is working because love has left the planet. Okay. And when they realize that nothing is working, they run back up to Olodumare, the one who owns the whole spectrum of the rainbow, the owner of the day. And they complain, you know, what you sent us down here for if we can't accomplish nothing, right? And Olodumare says, somebody's missing from this crew that I sent down there. Where is Oshun? And the comment was made, well, you know, who needs her? And that's when Olodumare summons Oshun from her resting place where she's just, you know, kicking back, waiting for them to recognize what's happening. When she arrives, she explains that they insulted her. They were stupid enough to think they didn't need fresh water. They didn't need sensuality. They didn't need love. And so the Most High makes them apologize to her. Okay. And I love this part. You know, in the Odu, it says she accepted their apology and she told them, don't let it happen again. Okay. And as a result of that, she had to decide whether she wanted to be bothered again. And so she turned herself on herself and gave birth to Elegbat. Now, I want to say very, very clearly that Oshe Otura is a very, very important story in my tradition. All of the stories we see when they hit the tray, when they arrive in front of us, we look for the manifestation of the story around us. To have Oshun leave us is a very, very dangerous thing, okay? And we see it in things like fracking. What's happening to our water supply? We see it in things like the way that they are raping the queen bee. Honey is sacred to Oshun. We see it in the sex trafficking of children that's going on this planet. All of these things we read as signs that we done pissed Oshun off. Okay. And so for the last 10 or 12 years, there have been priests all over the world going to the river, going to places where the river's dry, and making offerings and begging Oshun to come back to us. All of this is about wanting to recognize the power of the divine feminine.
It gives us a reason for surviving for us.
It brings us from chaos into order. It brings order to chaos. That's what culture does. Culture is powerful. European understands that. It binds us to each other. It gives us identity. It gives us a reason for surviving. And then it tells us who we should live for and who we should die for if we have to. Culture is an energy source for thriving. And it gives us a sense of security. It also puts us into a system of accountability. We are accountable to our ancestors. Now, when you're looking at all of that, and it's a template for living, then think about it. And it is a petri dish. So that African culture becomes a petri dish. It produces Africans. It cultivates Africans. And no other culture can make that statement. You hear me? No other culture can produce and cultivate Africans. Only African culture can do that. If we look at culture like that and see it as a means by which a people protect themselves, then we could understand culture as the immune system of a people. Think of people as an organism, and culture is that immune system, right? Okay. Now, what does the immune system do? The immune system, you have the T cells, you've got the lymphocytes, which become the warriors, right? Their job is to recognize the antigen. An antigen is a foreign body which threatens the health of the whole. And that's where you get that seek and destroy. All right? That's right. Because their job is to neutralize or eliminate in any way that disease, that poison, those antigens, those things that work against the health of the whole. Okay? Now, we look at culture as that. Genetic memory, if you read the medical journals, is connected to the immune system. They all talk about that. And I'm fascinated with genetic memory. So that there are these memory cells which carry the knowledge and information about how to defeat the disease. And I'm saying culture is all of that. Right? Okay, so what happens? You got the Ma'afa. Everybody know what the Ma'afa is? The Ma'afa is a great disaster. That's the kidnapping of us and all of that. The disconnecting us from that cultural womb. Okay? The Ma'afa carries the virus. The virus is the Urubu virus. See, all of this is very culture specific. This is all about us. I ain't talking about anybody else right now. I'm talking about us. When we use the term Ma'afa, we're talking about an African experience that was done to us. We're not comparing it with anybody else's. If we did compare it with anybody else's, we would understand that it is the worst crime against humanity ever committed by one race of people. So it carries this virus. Now, while the Ma'afa is carrying the virus, the process of the Ma'afa is Europeans committing cultural genocide against African people. Yes. What is genocide? The killing of the genes. So they have always worked to erase our cultural memory. Why? You see, you erase the cultural memory. What is that going to do? It's going to destroy and break down the immune system. Is it not? Okay. So we become vulnerable. And what is the nature of a virus? Virus really has no life of its own. Right? Did you know that? A virus needs a host. Right. That's right. And cannot be without being attached to that host. And in the Ma'afa, we become hosts for the European. And that's what that's about. Now, that's the case. It doesn't matter whether the European is here or not. It doesn't matter whether they sit in this audience or not. Because we will behave like them. If we carry the virus, it affects our behavior. And so what they have done is to create a situation in which we begin to destroy ourselves. That results in a condition of cultural AIDS. Cultural AIDS.
Independence, the country was not a republic. We created an empire. So we had an emperor and an empress first. It's after the assassination of the emperor that they came up with the republic. So every time somebody said, "Oh, la première république noire, la première république noire," bullshit. You did not create la première république noire. You created the first black empire. That's a lot more than the republic. Republic was barely just what is the West Department now. It's nothing. Please. Okay. So the Empress, she learned to read and write. She used to teach to treat people with natural herbs, natural plants. And she lived to be 110 years old. So she, yes. Went through all of slavery, see independence come, survived Dessalines by 52 years, and any government that was doing something that was not in the interest of the people, she would write you a letter and say, "No, we didn't create this country for that. What you're doing here is totally out of order with why we created this country." Always spoke her mind. Calm, quiet, determined, but clear. And in fact, the second emperor of Haiti, Emperor Faustin Ier, when he was in power, he had taken a decision that she thought was not proper. So she wrote to him and told him, you should not do that. At first he was annoyed with her. Then when he learned that this is the first empress of the country, blah, 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 he said that she's very old. She was 108 at the time. He says, well, he sent her an invitation to come and have dinner with him in the palace. She wrote him a letter saying, "I do not have dinner with people who has the founder's blood on their hands." That was her clear, quiet, tranquil answer. And, she sent her other invitation. The last invitation, she just write a big N-O-N on the paper and sign. No explanations, no talk. Now he decided, well, it's because she's very old that she can't come to Port-au-Prince. So he's gonna go visit her. So when he went, her walls, her doors are closed. He's knocking, she's not answering. So a soldier said, well, the door is not very, I could just bust this door open. And at that moment, I think the light came to the emperor's head. He says, no, you don't understand. The woman who's inside, even if I come in with an entire battalion, she will only do what she wants to do. So he just removed his big crown, multi-million-dollar crown, removed all his tra-la-la emperorship stuff, put all of them in their golden carriage, took his horse, rolled up his t-shirt, his shirts, sleeves, and went back to Port-au-Prince. Didn't stop any of the things that were prepared for him. And she died 110 in Saint Mark. About 2 months before, sent for people to make her coffin. When they finished doing it, they bring it to her. She writes her name on the coffin. Marie-Claire Rose, Félicité, Bonheur, Destiny, Bonheur, widow of Jean-Jacques Destiny.
Oui.
The liberator of Haiti. That's what she wrote on her coffin. And she passed a few weeks later. She prepared all her stuff. No, but I've seen since then, we've also, because of course, since we named the foundation after her, our mission is to do the things that she used to continue with what she used to do. So natural healing with natural plants, we deal with that, with history, we deal with that. And we also started a research about 12 years ago, research on centenarians in Haiti. And we were stunned. There's so many people in this country who live over 100 years old. It's just not funny. And you meet them 105, going up and down, can't stop with big basket on their heads coming down to sell. 115. The oldest person we met is 132, was 132.
Oh, they should be in the Guinness World Record.
Yes, Elina Daiti. In fact, when we first met her, she was 122. And the woman walked up a stairs, and I was like, what's this? She's like that, up the stairs, down the stairs, and anything she says, she's dancing to. Said, but how is your health? Me? I'm fine. Don't you see that? Yeah, because usually people say when you're old, your body is kind of stiff and you can, so she's always demonstrating that in her body, there's no such thing as stiffness and pain. They can't bend down. None of that.
And she's still alive. She's still alive.
No, she passed 7 years ago. She passed at 132. You go to her church, she's a leader. She walks 2 hours every Sunday to her church and sing louder than anybody else in the church. So, anyway, so this is Dr. the Empress, and we're in just about moving into our new area. So this is Fondation Marie-Claire Rose. These are the volunteers. We only work with volunteers, no personnel, no, everything is done by volunteers.
I am tired of white people beating down the mentality and self-esteem of our children. And I never did like a bully. And if in our community we're not going to be strong, I'll carry the weight for you and I'll wear it well. Here is a man who believes in capital punishment, but paints himself as a compassionate man. Here is a man who left the campaign to go home and oversee the murder of a black mentally retarded man and calls himself a friend to black people. Here is a man who, when the Vietnam War called him, said that he would not fight. He dodged the draft, but sent literature to my house saying that he was for military intervention against communism. So now you tell me, if he wasn't going to fight for the principles that he said he believed in, whose son was he sending to kill people all around the world? Well, I'm here to tell you, Mr. Clinton, not my man, honey. Not my man. Not my man today, not my son when I have one, and not anybody else's man who don't have the sense to know better. Is Mr. Clinton a racist? Is that what you're saying, Sister Soldier? Well, of course he is. As African people, we must raise the ante to the level where we stop letting people use slave master antics to woo us into their bedroom. It is no longer acceptable for white politicians to party with African women, play jazz, trumpets, and whatever else it is, eat soul food and say they down because they partying with us. That don't mean that you down because you partying with us. Everybody in the world wants to sleep with the African woman. That's no surprise. Everybody in the world wants to dance to our rhythms and float and feel our vibration. That's no surprise. Everybody in the world wants to eat our foods and down home cooking. That's no surprise. But where do you stand on the policy? And now that you've established that you're a liar, how can we tell that where you stand is where you really stand? And if you're a liar and you portray yourself to be Pinocchio, or you act like the little boy who cried wolf, how could you then come into my backyard and ask me for your support? The standards have got to be changed. White liberals in name and form means nothing without substance. It, in fact, is an even greater slap in your face. We cannot continue to allow it to go on. And I'm coming to the close with solutions. It is most important that we understand, even in the recesses of our mind, that we must use our spiritual power, that we cannot allow them to take our spirituality away from us because they have tried to manipulate our Bible, our Quran, and our Torah. As a people, if we realize that we are in a state of emergency, it becomes absolutely essential that we cut out all of the foolishness. Which means now that I've made mistakes, you've made mistakes, but we cannot make any more excuses. That in one of my songs on my album, I say, in a war, there can be no excuses. Two camps, the used and the users. Your mind, you've got to read and nourish. Your talent then unfolds and flourish. So to my people, I say this, that I am dedicated to a spiritual rebirth, that I will embrace and use my spiritual power to become a more moral person, that I will ask you to do the same. We must embrace our African values. We must teach them to our children and other children who do not have the pleasure of having coherent parents. We cannot afford to mess up because they're waiting for us to mess up. Which means now that you can be a black man with a small crime and they will use that to occupy you in the criminal justice system for the rest of your entire life.
We have an education system that does not speak to the needs of African children. We want to be able to be who we are, talk how we talk, walk how we walk, live how we want to live, and be producers and providers for our children in the future. We want to be African.
When the weight of the world is on your shoulders, take the power within and then you say, no, I can make it African. When the pain in this world try to consume you, they can do what they want, cause I will never stop drawing, and we can make it African. From ancient love and family, we gave the world humanity. We made this world a sacred place. We gave the world philosophy. We gave the world its chemistry. We found a world of time and space. From pyramids to ancient seas, we gave the world integrity. So now we standing tall, yeah. We gonna make it. We African. The world is on your shoulders. Take a power within and then you say, no, I can make it African. When the pain in this world try to consume you, they can do what they want, cause I will never stop drawing, and we can make it African. Gaining knowledge yourself, I'm glad I'm African. Although I look at the world, I see what's happening. We the people who was taken from a shining culture, losing noses of our ancient representing sculpture. Capture us with the tactic called divide and conquer. Men and women separated, treated with no honor. Wrote the middle passage, treated worse than animals. Stacked on top of each other, somehow we made it through. The pain and suffering, they tortured us in slavery. It's quite amazing, we stood up for natural bravery. Look at our people, the conditions we are living in. It's time to battle this world, it's time to shine again. When the weight of the world is on your shoulders, take a power within and then you say, no, I can make it African. When the pain in this world try to consume you, they can do what they want, cause I will never stop drawing, and we can make it African. We're in this together for battle. continue. They can do what they want, cause I will never stop doing, and we can make it African. When the weight of the world is on your shoulders, talk about within and then you say, no, I can make it African. When the pain in this world try to continue, they can do what they want, cause I will never stop doing, and we can make it African.
And so what hip-hop music has done is served as an alternative communication mechanism and given African children in this country some of the only understanding of African history.
This country, after Reconstruction, where African people owned a lot of land, owned a lot of businesses, and did a lot of things. But what happened was the American government, the Ku Klux Klan, and other organizations organized in smashing that effort. So it's not that we haven't tried to own land and have not organized businesses. It's that if you are African in America, or in Latin America, or in the Caribbean, or in the continent, you will be hunted.
Who is working today, brothers and sisters? The Black woman. Who's making more money? The Black woman. Who is more educated? The Black woman. Whose world are we in? The white man's world. He allows in his world to put the woman in front. If the woman is in front, she's taken the role of who? The male. In the Bible and in the Quran, it says man is the maintainer of woman. But in the white man's kingdom, he reverses that which God has made nature for us and natural. He reverses our nature and he puts the woman in front. He makes his society where she can go out and be employed. But when you come and ask for a job, oh, I'm sorry, you are overqualified, not qualified enough. We just gave the last job to another person. So your woman is out in front of you. She's working. She's bringing home the bread and butter. He's got her bamboozled because now, with a little money in her pocket, she starts getting a little heavy voice. With a little money in her pocket. Her mouth is uncontrollable. What is she saying to you? Father? She's saying, I make the money in this house. I pay the cost to be the boss. If you don't like what I say, you know what to do. She's not seeing the bigger picture, the hidden hand. She's not seeing the hidden hand of the white man, the slave master. We have the appearance of being free, but he's still in all of our affairs. She's working, feeling her empowerment that he gave her, the white man. You, every day, going out beating the road to find a job, and you come home empty-handed. Some of these women know that you're intelligent and even smarter than them. But then they begin to wonder, what's wrong with my John? What's wrong with my Henry? That he can't bring home no money to support his family. They don't know what's wrong, but they're asking, what's wrong? I'll tell you what's wrong. It is the white man who are in all of our affairs. This is his world and his kingdom. When he stole the black man from over in Africa, he never intended on him being a man. He never intended on him taking care of his woman. He never intended on him having power and authority. So in his world, in order to break him, he reverses the roles and makes it seem like progress to us when we are out there working out in his vineyard. We are happy about our degrees we received, the money we are making. But as we rise, he's pulling the black man down. If he meant good for us, we would be rising together, side by side. This has been a trick to make black women think that we are so much more than our man that God gave us. He didn't produce himself, nor did we produce ourselves. We were produced and given life by God Almighty. God doesn't make an inferior product nor mate for you because he is not inferior. We are in this world, the kingdom of the white man's world. Opportunity for the black woman, but none for the black man. Confusing our relationships. We have been put out in front for so long, sisters, until we have lost our femininity. It is not your fault. It was by design. Just as lesbianism is by design. He seated you for role reversal. If you are paying the lights, the gas, the rent, and you are putting the food on the table with no help from the male, then you automatically feel like, I'm a man. I don't need you. I only need you for the physical joys or pleasure.
I'm a Marxist. And my grandmother said the more education they get, the dumber they get. But anyway, when I'm training in psychiatry and looking for the answer to be an effective psychiatrist with Black people, looking for the answer to racism. And I remember attending a Black Power Committee meeting. And as a matter of fact, I was doing a fellowship in child psychiatry at that point. And I would get a voice. And you know, if you get a voice in here, you need to see a psychiatrist. If you get a voice in here, I think that's God talking to you. And the voice would say, and I would be writing up cases at the end of the day, and the voice would say, go to a Black Power Committee meeting. You know, just quietly, it wasn't frightening. So when ministers say they get a call, and I kind of know what they mean. And so this would happen over and over and over again. Again, it was subtle, very subtle, nothing to shake you up or anything, because I didn't go to meetings. And so I finally went to a Black Power Committee meeting. And after the meeting, people were sitting in somebody's apartment eating African food. And a gentleman was on the other side of the room. And I heard this man say, mind you, I'm looking for further answers to racism. And I hear this gentleman over there in the other corner saying racism is a system. And it's like my mind, you know, I'm looking for, you know, they say when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And so I started talking to this person. The gentleman's name was Neely Fuller Jr. He wasn't a college professor. He was a guard at the Bureau of Engraving in the District of Columbia, where they print the money. And this man had started writing about racism in the mid-1950s when he was in the Korean War. And he said he was seated on his station was on a radar site up in the mountains in Japan. And he started thinking about racism and thinking about what was going on in this country, in this part of the world. And he said that the language of segregation and desegregation didn't make much sense on that mountaintop. And he started thinking that racism is a system. Now I want to repeat after me, racism is a system. Now I consider this gentleman one of the most profound thinkers of any color in the 20th century. Remember, we started the 20th century with our great sociologist, historian, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. And Dr. Du Bois told us in his book, Souls of Black Folks, in 1903, that the problem of the 20th century is the question of the color line between the lighter and darker races of mankind. And then mid-century, Neely Fuller Jr. came along with his book, and I hope that everybody will get his book who doesn't have a copy. His phone number is 202-484-5461. But it is a profound statement, analysis of looking at racism as a total system structure that functions in all areas of people activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, for the ultimate purpose of maintaining the power equation of white power over a relative non-white powerlessness. So being a psychiatrist, and at that point, that's the mid-1970s, late 1960s, we would sit up in my apartment, and that was when, you're at an age you can sit up and debate till 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning and get up and go to work. That's not the case today. But I would listen to the discussion of Mr. Fuller. We had another colleague, Dr. Carl Hutchinson. He's deceased, Chicago physician. He was training in orthopedic surgery. And Mr. Fuller had a beautifully hand-printed, might have had 1,800 pages of beautifully handwritten notes, documentation of his ideas that he carried around in his suitcase. Dr. Carl Hutchinson said, "I will type this manuscript in between surgical cases." And so he took the handwritten manuscript and typed it. And I spent the next 17 years saying, this has got to be printed, so, got to be published. And so by 1984, it was published. But I started raising the question. Psychiatrists always, old school psychiatrists, I say new school psychiatrists, are just supposed to, oh, you're depressed? Well, let me write a prescription. You see, oh, you're anxious? Let me write a prescription and goodbye. I'll see you next time for another 15 minutes. I'm old school. I see all my patients for 1 hour. I believe that you have to talk to people and understand, and then help them understand so that they can graduate from the psychiatrist and go forward, because they now understand reality in a different way. So I started saying, well, why? If indeed, and I say racism as a dynamic, racism as white supremacy has been the reality that Black people all over this planet have faced for the last 500 years. There's never been a moment, there's never been a minute, there's never been a day, there's never been a week where we have not been confronted with racism, white supremacy as a system. Never a half a minute. So I said, well, why would such a system be developed? And Mr. Fuller used to say to me, Francis, it's not important why, just learn what the system is. But, you know, the psychiatrist in me, I got to understand why. See, that's where little children are brilliant. Little 2-year-old people, little 3-year-old people, they start saying, why? Why? You know, and older people get annoyed, shut up. But don't ever tell a child. If a child is saying, why, mommy? Why, granny? Why? You may not know the answer. Just tell the child, I don't know the answer, but I'll try to find out for you. And if I don't find out and you study and learn, you'll find out. But the question why is what turns on the brain computer. The child is asking about cause and effect. And if you can begin to understand cause and effect, you begin to get a handle on dealing with reality. So I raised the question, well, why this reality of racism? As I said, my grandfather died in 1909, and he's talking about the problem of color. Dr. Du Bois talked about it in 1903. Every Black person that has been of significance to Black people has tried to grapple with what was happening, what was causing us to be oppressed, and raising issues or raising discussion about it. So I tell people, mind you, I have the question in the back of my brain computer, why would they do it? And I was actually in my kitchen cooking hands in dishwater. The computer came with the answer. And what I started thinking about was things that were said within the system. Number one, the system said that we, as people of color, were minorities. And the other emphasis that was even greater than the factor, the numerical factor, was that we were supposed to be genetically inferior to people who classified themselves as white. Now I say, spend as much time in school as you can, spend as much time in the libraries as you can, spend as much time in bookstores as you can. Reading, repeat after me, reading is more important than TV. Say it again. Reading is more important than watching TV. See, everything is in books. Everything is in books. And I say beware of these little small things that you can hold in your hand where you think you're getting as much information as if you're holding a book. Just beware. So with all of the reading and all of the going to school that I had done, I said, wait a minute. People of color on this planet are the overwhelming majority. Black, brown, red, and yellow people are 9/10 majority on this planet. The other thing, that we are supposed to be genetically inferior, and I said, well, wait a minute. In my mind, I'm talking to wait a minute. Black people, people of color, are genetically dominant in terms of skin coloration to compare to people who classify themselves as white. And I said, I've got it. Just like that, standing in the kitchen, cooking, hands in the dishwater. I said, this is the answer. So let me put it on the board. See if you all can see this. Let's say this is the planet Earth. Can you all see? Okay. So 9/10 of the people are black, brown, red, and yellow. 1/10 of the people have white skin. Instead of the people being genetically inferior, the people who can produce the black pigment melanin are genetically dominant. You haven't taken a course in genetics. Just look at our president, Barack Obama. President's mother is white. His father is black. Because the ability to produce that black pigment is dominant, and the inability is a recessive genetic trait. So black plus white could only produce black. Are you all with me? So I said, now what am I doing? Let's say that this is planet Earth and this is Europe. And this is 1492. And Columbus started European people coming out and moving, little boats coming out of Europe, beginning to circumnavigate the planet. Every place these white gentlemen landed, they found colored people. Colored people everywhere.
Parents, mixed race parents, one Asian and one supposedly white, were apparently not paying any attention whatsoever. He was a child who was being humiliated, patterns of behavior in the system of that his parents, mixed race parents, one Asian and one supposedly white, were apparently not paying any attention whatsoever to. You see, they were into a denial of racism, white supremacy, certainly in denial as in predominantly white situations where children were bullying him or mistreating him because he was not white. This is standard operating behavior in the system of racism, white supremacy. And so my question is, in any way, apparently from what the parents are saying, the father is willing to call the son racist, blaming him for being racist, as opposed to looking at and confronting what are the attitudes on the part of people who classify themselves as white towards non-whites. And this would be inclusive of children in those families. How do they? That's what the system of racism, white supremacy is. When Eliot spoke about he was very young when he realized there was a hierarchy. No, when he was very young, he realized there was a system of racism, white supremacy. White on top. non-white on the bottom, non-white being mistreated. Now, I say that the parents are to blame, but see, we have a lot of mixed race situations going on now, more than ever before. And you can call this mixed race insanity, where there's absolutely no preparation for the child who is going to be non-white, what that child is going to be experiencing, as the parents are in a denial of racism, white supremacy, and therefore, because they are in denial, they are not acting so as to protect the child that they brought into the world. See, it's like the mixed race couples who have a black child and the white mother doesn't know what to do with the black child's hair. So the hair is standing up all over the child's head, looking like something from another planet. The parents are in denial. They've got a non-white child in a system of racism, white supremacy. For example, I think President Obama is, for the level of hostility that he is experiencing in the system of racism, white supremacy. I truly think that he's unprepared because he had a white mother. You see, so yes, in other words, does he know there's yes, he knows there's racism, but does he know the depth? Did anything prepare him for what he is experiencing? The 24/7 demeanment, the refusal, 90% of the time, whether in print or vocally, to say President Obama. No, we are not going to respect him. And even if the country, going back to, even if we destroy the country, we are not going to respect him. I truly don't. I look at his eyes sometimes and I think that he's completely unprepared for the level of hostility that he has to encounter. You see, no matter whether he turns left or right, it's wrong. And so the denial of racism, white supremacy is essential to its maintenance. The more it's denied, so that people can't lay it out on the table and dissect it and understand it. If it can be dissected and understood, like we're attempting to do in this program, then that's one thing. But if it's denied and no, it doesn't exist, then let's talk about anything other than system of racism, white supremacy. Let's call it Jim Crow. Let's call it, let's just talk about slavery in the abstract. But don't talk about system as it relates to white survival on the planet, local, national, global. See, even the big immigration discussion, I maintain until proven otherwise that remove the blacks and bring in the browns, because they are less of a color threat to white genetic survival. So we can, genocide the blacks for now. We've genocided the Native Americans, we can genocide the blacks. Push them out of the urban centers, take away political power, try again to destroy their right to vote. And we'll pay their leaders so that their leaders won't talk about racism, white supremacy, so they will not be understanding what is happening to them. So impeach him, sue him, tear him down, beat him up. Do you see? It's no different than the experience that Elliot Rodgers experienced in the school. But his parents are saying, we won't look at it. his Asian mother, we won't look at it. White father, we won't look at it. So that he's being beat up without any protection. It's no different than a child being sexually in a family, and the adults don't want to look at it, and so then the child is traumatized. Elliot Rodgers could have qualified for post and continuous traumatic stress. Post and continuous traumatic stress, being in an environment where he is being beat up effectively, psychologically, by racism, white supremacy, and in which he had no protection. Standing. And for him to have a father who produced films about children killing other children, is that right? His father, livelihood is producing films about destruction of human life. So his son is sitting there in the house, and the father's talking about, I guess, at some level, or showing what he's producing. And so his son learns the destruction of human beings. And nobody pulls that together. Barbara Walters, Jewish, she has a history of her people being destroyed based on racism, white supremacy. So she doesn't see it. She doesn't talk about it with Mr. Rogers. So it could be Planet of the Insane. And for the father to say he was jealous of me, as opposed to a father saying, I know that I am white in a system of racism, white supremacy. I married a non-white female, and so my son was non-white and would be looked at as other than white in the environment that I'm in. And so because I understand racism and white supremacy, I'm doing everything
sold, beaten, raped, experimented on. And then you have to ask the question, did the slave syndrome is an explanatory theory that really looks at multi-generational trauma. One of the things that's difficult for people is their first response is, oh my God, that happened so long ago. We're talking about people being captured, shipped, sold, beaten, raped, experimented on. And then you have to ask the question, did the trauma continue? Yes. So 300 years of trauma, no help, freed, no help, more trauma. If it's a sustained trauma, then the impact of that is also sustained. When we look at multi-generational trauma, we're looking at people who are maybe victims of natural disasters and their families and their children, and generations of folks who have experienced war. And we know that there are residual mental, emotional, traumatic impact. And what I did was I started to look at the African-American experience, starting with slavery, as a real clear, long enduring trauma. So I started to see that there were clear connections between that survival behavior and contemporary living in African-American experience. I started to see common behaviors that I took for granted as, well, cultural. There's adaptive behaviors, survival behaviors. Well, what are they? Let's just say 2019, you have a black mother and a white mother. The sons go to school together. They find themselves at a meeting. The black mother leans over to the white mother and says, I just wanted to mention to you that I noticed that your son is really doing quite well. And the white mother's response is, oh, thank you. She begins to go on and on about he won the science fair, his uncle's an astronaut. She's just oozing. She realizes the black mother's son is actually excelling her son. And she says, well, wait a minute. Your son's the one that's really coming along. And the black mother responds, oh my God, he's a handful, but oh, he just works my nerves. Now, when I'm working with African-American people, it doesn't matter what the audience is. It doesn't matter what class. If I were to ask, is she very proud while she's saying those denigrating things? And everybody laughs and goes, of course, there's a secret. Because everybody black knows that even though the black mother is going, oh my God, she's really proud. So now let's roll that scene back 300 years. And let's say this black mother is working in the fields and a white slave owner says, wow, that boy is really coming along. What is she gonna say? No, he's not. He's stupid. He's shiftless. He can't work because I don't want you to sell him. So I denigrate them to protect them. That is called appropriate adaptation when living in a hostile environment. The little white boy, say Timmy, he feels really comfortable and happy about what his mom just said about him. And Trey looks at his mom and wonders, why can't you be proud of me? Because he doesn't understand the secret yet. And by the time he learns the secret, he will have already been injured by it. Post-traumatic slave syndrome. PTSD is a disorder that occurs as a result of a single trauma. You don't even have to be there to actually get a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. You could just hear about something horrific happening to someone you love. So you have people who have experienced it firsthand, people who have witnessed it in their environment, right? People who are continuing to be oppressed. That exacerbates any possibility of healing. So it's not post-traumatic stress disorder, because then it becomes part of what we call your socialization process. So you begin to normalize a way of living and being, everything from what we eat to what we believe it means to be a friend. All of these things are colored by history. And if you don't understand it, you're going to fold in things that you've just assumed are normal. But post-traumatic stress disorder, exaggerated startle response, outbursts of anger, feeling of foreshortened future. There was a point where there were African-American children in different urban settings that didn't expect to live to be adults because they saw so much death, that they started planning their funerals like at 13, 12, as young as 10. When you start looking at the simple biology, you start looking at the impact of stress on health. And while we look at general stress, we know finances, you have illnesses, all these different things. How about being Black? How does factoring in being Black in America impact your stress level and therefore your body's ability to operate its own immune system? Because we know it compromises the immune system. Once you understand it, then you can deal with it, because you see it's habitual. You socialize, it becomes part of your being. So one of the ways you begin to address that multi-generational trauma is to work with the people it directly impacts, to hear from them. And when you give the people the information, they can use it. I think the first order of business is beginning to have a conversation. And the other is to educate the larger society. You have to stop the assault. So this is not purely a clinical thing. This requires social justice and change. That's where part of the healing is. It's not in a clinical setting or in a pill. It's in fairness and justice and safety and equity. We got to work with some of those clinical things, some of those issues of panic and anxiety. And we also have to deal with the fact that you have a system that is set up to oppress you and to continue to injure you. Both those things have to be dealt with. And they cannot singularly by themselves affect a change. They have to be done collectively.
seeing me as they spew for their lives and plan my people's demise, whose broad stripes and bright stars represent all the stars inflicted upon our race, a great evil displaced. Now the time has come for the revolution as we march through the night and take hold of their lives. Barbie land and red and black and green, African flag wave. When we win the victory, forever